Okay, so over to you, Peter.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Oh, it looks like Avril made it. Good.
Yeah, sorry, I've had problems with my computer and I'm texting someone now about it.
Okay. So if people can mute themselves when they're not wanting to participate, if you want to make a comment, you can just press the space bar and that'll let you in.
Okay, hang on a sec till I get rid of this. That's better. Okay, can everybody see?
I can see you're not sharing your screen just yet, Pete.
No? I must have the wrong bloody screen. Hang on a sec. Really? Well, here we go again.
I thought you'd be an expert after the number of times you've done it on the PAGB group, you know.
Yeah, but I always go through this. Let's try this one. Can anybody see anything?
Not yet.
See you.
No, well, that's no good. It's not the. That's not the.
Are you pressing the share screen button at the bottom there?
Yeah, I've got share screen.
Have you hit?
I've got to hit share.
Got to hit share. Yeah, that always does it.
Uh-huh.
That's better.
Is that better?
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
Okay.
Good. We're off.
Okay. Now this is going to go right from square one on this. The first square one to talk about is why you're even doing it, and I think there are several reasons, and I think the most important one is that photographs really are captured memories. I mean, this is why we take a photograph, is so that we can remember whatever it is we're photographing, and a book allows you to keep that and store that memory and make it available. You got to get the prints run to the bed, because if they sit like mine do under a bed, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, your wife doesn't like the way they collect dust under the bed. You can, in fact, take your best images and get them so that you can present them to an audience. And let's face it, everybody likes to show off their work, particularly if they're proud of it. And this is the other thing: you can share your experiences with somebody else, and that is a powerful thing, especially if you have images or experiences that nobody else can have. The other thing a book allows you to do is build a narrative around your images. A picture has a message, but if you have a book, you can put a narrative around those images to enhance that message. The first thing you got to do when you decide to make a book is you got to decide who's going to publish it, who's going to create the physical book. There are two ways, really, two major ways. The first is do it yourself, and this involves printing each page of the book yourself, and then find some way of putting those into a book form. And the easiest way, and Mike Davison, I know, has used this method, is these covers that you can buy from Photospeed or Permajet, and they're spring-loaded, and you just fold the cover back, pop your book pages into that cover, and close it, and then you have a book. You can also go, and I've done this once, way back before we had all the fancy things we've got now. You can actually go to a professional bindery. There's one in London called Wyvern that does a lovely job. And they'll take your pre-printed pages and actually bind them into a book, a real book. The other way to do it is to have somebody else actually produce the physical book, and they'll take your input, your book, in digital form and produce a hard copy book. And this is the way I think most people do it now. If you're going to do it yourself, if you're going to do it by buying a cover, a spring-loaded cover, and printing the pages, then there's just a couple of things you got to decide. First of all, the size and the orientation, and that may be governed by the cover format itself. And you have to decide on paper type. And if you're doing it yourself, the only limitation in paper really is whether you're going to do it one-sided or two, because there are very few papers that actually are called dual paper. I've got one here from Photospeed called their Photospeed Dual Matte, I think it is. And you can print on both sides of it, but don't count on printing on the back side of normal paper, because it just doesn't work. If you're going to do it at a bindery, you're going to print the pages and then have it bound at a bindery, then you got to find one, first of all, and there don't appear to be very many down in the South Coast here that I could find anyway. You have to decide on a format, and sometimes a portrait-looking book, even in a photo book, is effective. Now, this is another thing, and this almost applies to the cover, making the pages and then using one of those snap covers. You have to find the correct grain of paper, and I learned this when I printed my first book and took it to the bindery. If you pick up a piece of paper and hold it up, if you hold it in one by say the long edge and just let it flop over, you'll find there's a certain resistance to it flopping over. And then if you take the other end and just hold it up horizontally, you'll find it flops much more easily. That's the edge that you're now holding, where the paper flops over easily, is the way you want. That's the edge you want to bind, because you'll see that the paper folds much more naturally when you open a book and leave it open. If you go against the grain, the page will tend to not flop over nicely. So that's something to watch when you're making your own. If you're having a company outside print your book, they know all about that stuff. Then there are a couple of things you got to pay attention to if you're going to a binder, and you got to talk to them ahead of time. First of all, when they bind it, at the bindery edge, at the bound edge, you're going to lose some room. So if you print your images directly on a piece of paper, centered, then you're going to find all of them tend towards the spine inside if you don't leave an offset. The other thing they do is they put all your pages together, and then to make sure that they're all even on the edges, they'll trim something off, and you got to find out from the bindery how much you're going to lose because they trim it. Okay, if you're going to get somebody to do it externally, so you're going to make your book digitally and then send it to somebody else to make. Have a look around, and there are lots of people in the club who have made books with their favorite publishers. So try and find examples and have a look, get some opinions, because there are various things you've got to check. The first thing, of course, is cost, because there's a wide range of costs. And in fact, you've got to check the current cost, because my favorite publisher, who was Aperture Books, it used to cost me for an A3 coffee table type book, it used to cost me about £120. They got bought out, and now about the cheapest you can get from them is £230 for one book. The other thing to watch is they'll give you a typical cost of say 40 pages, and you pay, for example, Aperture is charging £2 per additional page after I think it's 40. So that's the first thing you've got to watch. Look at the kind of paper quality you've got, and some places will actually send you samples. Others, I don't know. You just take a chance or get opinions from somebody else who's already had a publication from that company. The other thing to check is for color fidelity, because there's nothing worse than sending them a great picture and then it comes back and the color is just way off. It just it makes the book worthless, in my opinion, anyway. The other tricky thing is, if you're going to do mono in your book, see if you can get an example either from somebody or from the printer themselves, because a lot of times if they're doing a cheap job, you'll get a color cast in mono that you wouldn't even notice in the color pictures. Well, there's a multitude of places you can go to get this. I think the favorite right now is Blurb. If you got the money, you can go to Aperture. I think Jan has used Bob Books, and I don't know if there are others out there or not. But ask around in the club. I'm sure there's samples around for any of the popular ones anyway.
I use Photobox.
Oh, Photobox, yeah, yep.
I wouldn't recommend them anymore because their text bit is awful.
Yeah, well, this is why you've got to use the experience of people around the club to find out the ones that are still doing a good job.
I don't say I use Cewe, CEWE, and they're very good and very professional.
Maybe, Jeff, could everybody send their favorite book publisher to you, and we'll get a list somewhere?
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea if you just mail me and or just mail competitions at just the Camera Club, and I can pick that up. And
I
then
think that'd be useful,
I
and
could
then everybody's
put
got
a
a sort of
post out,
directory
yeah.
of who to talk to about what printer.
If you just put it in the chat, because we're recording it, Jeff, then that will be saved.
Yeah, that will work as well. That's a good idea.
Okay. Anyway, if you find a publisher that sounds like it's good, what you really need to do is download their software and try using it, making a phony. It doesn't matter what you put it together, but just make sure that you can use it and understand how to use it, because I was in the computer game for a long time, and boy, I've seen some pretty obscure ways of doing things. And if you can't use the software and can't understand it, then it's useless to you. What you got to check in looking at the software is what features, and some of the ones that I really I think everybody would have now. You got to have some way of visualizing the final product. When you put the book together, there's got to be some way that you can actually on your screen read that book, so that you can see what it's going to look like as a final product. Otherwise, you're just taking a chance with your money and your time. It's going to be a photo book, so there's got to be some good way of finding and including images. Sizing facilities, in Aperture, I don't use their signing, and I'll make a comment later about sizing images. But the one thing they did have is when I drew up a page and I had a hole on that page for an image, then they would tell me what the dimensions of that hole were, so that I could resize the thing myself. So there are things that are handy like that. I don't know whether all manufacturers now allow you to develop your own custom page templates, but this is where you can make a format and you can put holes in that page for pictures and text and color and everything. I like to do my own thing, and I don't like to be governed by what somebody else thought my pages should look like. So make sure that whatever software you've got, it gives you the facility for making your own design of pages. Look for things like, can you have different backgrounds? Can you use different fonts? Let me say one thing about fonts. When you're making your book, make sure that the font, it's backup day, or no, it's virus checker day. He's going to sit there for a while. make sure that the font you use is a common font to whatever operating system you're using. I got fancy with my book on Birmingham, and I found a lovely font called Braden, and I used it. And then with Windows 10, I guess it was, or some version of Windows 10, Microsoft dropped Braden, and I now can't reprint or anything else my book because the font is no longer available. With the publisher, check to see what kind of paper types are available, gloss or semi-gloss or matte. I'm not sure. I tried matte once, and quite frankly, the printed image came out pretty flat and sort of lifeless. I use kind of a silk, non-textured paper, and for me, that's perfect. And because I don't like doing glossy prints, so I didn't want my books to be glossy either. This is a handy one if they've got it, and I suppose most places have it now, because if you're going to put any text in your book, then it's inevitable that you're going to have spelling mistakes in there, and if you just try reading, guess what? You'll go right over it, and the first time you find the spelling mistake is when you open up the finished product and look at the pages, and the first page you look at will have the spelling error. I've seen it happen. The other thing is, you might find that your book, somebody else says, oh, gee, I'd like a copy of that book. Make sure you can get more than one of them so that you can go back and get reprints of whatever you've produced at hopefully the same cost. Once you've decided on who you're going to get, then finalize a few things. You got to make some decisions here. You've got size. Are you going to have an A4 book, an A3? Jan, what were the small books you produced? They were neat too. I think you had A5s, didn't you, Jan?
You're muted, Jan.
He's looking for the button. Anyway,
A5 was the one I used.
yeah. I mean, for a book that you just want to sort of put pictures into, that's a great thing. So size is important. I love A3 coffee table books, but that's just me. Orientation, a lot of the places will now do square or portrait or landscape. So decide which way you want to go. Background's important. The last two books I've done have had actually black background. And if you're going to have something like a solid color background, make sure that the printer is up to producing an even and flaw-free background for your printed background, because otherwise it could look pretty bad. And decide on the font. And you might want to do a bit of experimenting, because what you see as a font on the screen may not look quite the same on paper. I'm particularly thinking of size. So do a bit of experimenting and determine what final appearance you want from your font, and then make a record of that size or sizes.
Pete, would you use one font throughout the book? Or
that's the other thing. What you want to do is be consistent. If you start mixing a different font on every page, then quite frankly, there's no continuity in the page. It just, in the book, it just feels disjointed. Once you establish a font, then stick to it. Different sizes maybe, headings and otherwise, italic maybe, and normal, but one font for the book, not multiples. Good point, Jeff.
Ask a question, Pete, please.
Yep.
You're talking about fonts, etc. Could you do your text in, say, Word, and then do the spell checking and then copy and paste it into the book?
Yeah, you just have to make sure that, in fact, you can do that. That you can take copy text and then Control V thing, and that whatever software you've got, that's it'll accept that kind of processing. I imagine most do, but that's another thing to check. I did that on the last book I did. because I found it was easier in Word to do it than
Okay,
typing
thanks,
it.
Pete. Thanks.
If I could just add there, Jim, sometimes it's better to copy the text out of Word into something like Notepad, and that will lose all the formatting. So if Word had different fonts and things, you can just get the plain text and
Yep.
then copy it. So you copy it from Word into Notepad, and then from Notepad into the program, and that will get rid of any layout that Word has
Right,
done.
thanks for that.
Okay, now from the publisher, you got to find out what's the format they want the images in, and it's probably JPEG. The color space, this is important. Find out what color space they're going to print in. It's probably sRGB, which is not the best color space in the world, but it's probably the one they use. If, for example, you try and pass over to them things like ProPhoto, then you'll find all the images in the book will be dark because they're printing probably in sRGB. You've sent them ProPhoto, and they don't do any conversion of color space. They take what you give them. So be careful there. Find out what, in fact, they want as a color space. Resolution, make sure that when you resize them and even though you're resizing by pixel size, maybe make sure that the DPI setting is correct for whatever the printer wants. 300 DPI is what I found they want, because otherwise your resizing won't be good. And this is the point I wanted to make.
Pete, just a quick response to that. I did a book with some old photographs that my mother had, and I had to scan those at a much higher resolution than 300 DPI. Otherwise, they wouldn't print properly in the book.
Really?
Yeah, I had to use 1200 DPI to get a decent scan before these old photographs would go in the book and print properly.
Okay, there's something else to remember, people. I'd have to think about that one.
I think that it depends a lot on the size of the image you're scanning, Mike. So if you have a small image, you need a higher resolution. If you had like a 20 by whatever, or an A4 image, you wouldn't need to scan at such a high resolution. So it depends on the size of the image you're scanning.
And don't forget,
really.
this is their DPI. This is what they're printing at, not what you're scanning at. But don't rely particularly on upsizing. But for me, I think you should resize to whatever the hole in the page is. Okay? Because then you're sure that the resizing you use is appropriate. I would much rather use any resizing that's in Photoshop as either embedded in Photoshop or one of the outside ones, because then you're making sure that A, the quality of the resizing is good, and B, you can control the quality, the color, the sharpening, and you're not reliant on somebody else's software. You've got control if you resize. If you leave a big image and you have a small hole, they'll fill the hole, but God knows how they're going to do it, and it might not be the best resizing in the world. So I would rather make sure that the picture I send them fits exactly into the hole that I sent them, because then you've got complete control over the quality of the image. So watch that. It's important that what you send them fits the page and the hole in the page that you've left for that picture. Okay, when we come to building the book, the first thing is you have to decide what style, what I call a style of book, and there are two of them. The first is fairly straightforward. It's a simple collection of photographs, like a photograph album. Like, your parents used to stick pictures on a black piece of paper and they would randomly sort of put pictures in. Not necessarily with very much text or any text even. You've got to decide on how you're going to order the images in this collection. Are you going to do it chronologically, by location, and so on? Even with a simple book, then don't just jam a whole bunch of pictures into a page. Make sure that you give the picture enough room so it can be seen without interference from the pictures all around it. I've seen examples where there were some fantastic pictures, but they're surrounded by some not so fantastic pictures, and quite frankly, it destroyed the effect of the good pictures in that. The other style is something that's more complex and takes a hell of a lot more work. This is, are you going to have captions or extended captions or even paragraphs? Are you going to have chapters? Is it going to be broken down into different aspects of the particular subject or storyline that you're developing? And in that case, you've got to come up with what is the subject of each chapter? How are you going to organize it? And this is the thing that Jeff mentioned earlier. Come up with a few page layouts. Don't have a different layout for every page, because quite frankly, the eye gets tired after a while if it has to keep relearning how to look at a page, because you've got a different layout for every page in the book. So generate some consistent templates if your software allows that, and stick to them, not rigidly, but pretty much. Only change from those templates if there's a particular reason, and I'll show you an example afterwards. Now, if you're doing a more complex book, you've got to come up with a narrative. It's like writing any essay. You've got to keep in mind what's the story you're telling with the book. What's the purpose of the book? What story do you want to tell? What chapters are you going to have? Then sort of sketch out just what the content of each chapter is, because what you got to do is go and find the images that fulfill the purpose of that particular chapter. So make a collection of photographs that will fit the style and the narrative of the book. And they can be both mono and color. They can be whatever shape you want, but nothing fancy, just good photographs that will fit the narrative of the book. And fewer is better than more. At least I think so. Okay, so decide on the photo sequence inside a chapter so that it flows, so that you can read the book. Design the pages. You want one or more than one photo per page. And the other point is, don't forget that 2 pages in a book face each other. So consistency across the double spread is a good idea if you can make it work. When you've got a chapter set up and it feels good, then fill in the text and look at the narrative flow of the book so that you actually can literally read it and follow what you were trying to say. And then, of course, what you do is you sit there with the review feature of the software and you leaf through the book just as though you're reading it, and have a look and see how it reads. And this is very important. Spell check. The last thing you should do is spell check the thing again, because that last sentence that you put in after you were finished, that's the one that's going to have the spelling error in it. So spell everything for the last, spell check everything for the last. Sit there and look at it and admire it for a bit and make sure you're comfortable with it. And then all you do is you hit the button. Remembering that if you've got low line speed, it's going to take a while. You're probably better off looking for a low traffic. If you got a low line speed, look for a low traffic time to send your book, because it does take a while if you don't have a high speed line. Okay, so that's kind of how I approach a book and how I plan it and I look at it. And if anybody's interested, I can send a copy of this presentation to everybody. I've got it somewhere around, and I can fire it out to you if you're interested. Just drop me an email and I'll reply and send it to you. Okay? Now, what I thought I'd do is put my money where my mouth is, kind of, and show you show you a book, my book. If I can get rid of this again. Screen sharing is stopped at the shared window is closed. Okay. Let me get rid of that for a minute. Okay, can you share me again, or do I share me again? Okay. Oh, Jesus. Okay. I think it's this one. Okay. Can everybody see my screen? Yes, no?
Yes.
Good, yeah.
Good. Okay. So this is the latest book, and I'm going to use this for a talk later in the season, so I won't read you the whole thing. But this is the software that Aperture Books gives me, and it was usable. The only thing it didn't have was a spell checker, and that's why I went to Jim Waddington's method of doing text, which was to type it into Word, let Word do the spell checking, and then move the text over. This is their cover setup image, and it makes a couple of points which are important. Number one, don't forget they are going to trim, when they bind your book, they're going to trim it, and that's what they're trying to show you here. So you got to keep the pictures and everything. You got to remember that your picture, if it's a full one like the front of the cover here, it's going to get trimmed off. So don't put anything right on the edge that you can't afford to lose. I put whatever's on the cover as the first page in the book just because that's me. This is the font I decided to use. Because it was kind of a snapshot kind of book, I looked for a casual font, not a formalized one, and this is the one I used. And when you flip inside, you can, I don't know whether on your smaller screen you can see how it looks or not, but it's a nice font. It fits what I felt about the book. And what I've done in the last couple of books is number one, you'll notice that the background is black. I just happen to like it with almost white printing. The font looks good on it, and the photographs look better. And this is my first chapter. And in fact, just to give you an example of kind of what I call chapters here.
Pete, out of interest, what font is that?
I can find out for you in a second. When we come back, I'll tell you what font it is. I'll find it. But for example, in this book, I've got I've got 6 chapters because I wanted to make it like a tour of London. This is the London I like, and I go to it. And I've got the first one is To, From, and Around London, which is about the trip up to London and how even getting there is fun. My first foray in London, which was the first experience I had photographing in London. Then a walk on the south side, and then visits further afield. And then there was a special event that happened that we experienced, a big event in London. And then the last chapter is, and then there's the city. So what I did was I built a plan, and those were the chapters I knew I wanted to have. And that was before I started with pictures or anything else, because what I wanted to do was show kind of like the snapshots I took on various trips to London and how I felt. Every chapter starts the same way on the right-hand side. There's a page with just the title of the thing, and then it's into the layout. And every chapter has this introductory paragraph, and then one or more pictures. And this is one of the formats I use, with the 2 smaller pictures and then typically a bigger one on this side. in this particular case, because I liked the pairing of these two, I broke my rule right away and went to an off template picture. Normally, though, my pictures are like this, full-size pictures, one a page. But there was an occasion or two that I've actually broken them. You'll be seeing more of these. For example, here, this was traveling on the tube, and I had two pictures that talked about traveling on the tube, so I put them together. I'm not sure it works, but that's the way it ended up. So that's one chapter, and then the next chapter, I start the same way, so that it's a recognizable restart of the narrative, if you will. And then this is one of my templates, and I use this in this whole chapter. And the same thing, I've got text here describing this chapter, and then images inside. And the next chapter is kind of the same thing, and so on. Okay, and you'll notice that in every chapter I use basically the same format. And this gets so that people can read the book and not get lost because of the presentation. Now, there was one thing I wanted to show you because I learned something here. The one chapter was called A Big Event in London, and this was because Margaret and I went up to London one day, and we were in, I can't even remember what tube station it is, right at Parliament Square, and it was a Friday morning, I think. Anyway, there were a whole bunch of kids coming up the escalator as we went down, I think it is, and we thought, this is very peculiar because it's a school day and what the hell's going on? So we decided to follow the kids, and this was the big event, the environment event in London. And so I took a bunch of pictures there, and this is my introduction one. I know she got into all the press, this girl with the world on her face. But I must say, I got the first picture of her because he was just coming out of her parents' car when I happened to get her. This is the page, or set of pages I wanted to show you, because this is a big mistake. I wanted to put a bunch of images together, okay? What I did not do is sort of construct a preview of them that I could print, okay? And on my screen, they looked okay, particularly when I was resizing and everything. But then I found when I got the book back that actually I'd made them too small. Okay, so what I should have done here is sort of laid out a page and then put it onto paper just to see what the visual impact or lack of impact was in the actual printing of the thing. Because quite frankly, these were too small, one size up. If I'd made them a little bigger and a little fewer of them, it would have been better. So that's something to watch, is when you're going to do something like that. The other thing in this was, sometimes it's nice to have a narrative. I love this guy's expressions as he was a bus driver and his bus was stuck because the crowd was so crowded, he couldn't move his bus. And so he stood there talking to me about how he thought it was great that the kids were out there. So I broke, this is the only page in the book that looks like this, but I wanted something different to sort of continue his expressions in one page. Okay, I don't want to show you the whole thing because I want to use this as a topic for a talk we're giving later in the year sometime. But I thought I would show you some of what I've put in. Are there any questions on the book, how I made it, why I did what I did or didn't?
Pete, just a question. On all the photographs you put, there's a stroke, a white stroke line.
Yep.
Is that what you put on all the images, or is that part of the software that's being used?
No, in the software that I was using from Aperture, you can put whatever key line you want around the photographs in whatever color, I remember when I did a book with my publisher, you had to put your own stroke around the pictures, and they really screwed it up badly. I mean, in the printing, sometimes they'd lose one side of the key line, and it was a mess. So if you want to use key lines, it's better if your software actually puts it in, because then you're guaranteed you're going to get it all around the picture. When you're printing on black like this, I think it's necessary. You haven't got to. But you can see why I said you got to check, if you're going to have a color background, you got to check that it's going to be good printing. Because if this had flecks of white in it because their coverage wasn't very good, it would just destroy the whole effect of the black background. So you got to be careful how you put it, who's going to put the ink on the page, because if it's not good quality, then I don't think a solid background like that will work. Okay. Anything else? Good. Okay. I'll stop sharing and then John can jump in here. Okay. So thanks anyway.
Thanks a lot, Pete. That's great.
Has John gone to sleep?
Are you there, John?
Are you there, John?
You're muted at the moment.
I thought maybe he'd fainted from his blood test.
Isn't he washing up?
I have the anti-Trump vaccine this morning. It's called democracy. Right, can you all see me? I'm just going to show you the book we're going to work on. And I'm working in Bookwrite, which is the best form of the blurb options. They do another one called Booksmart, which I haven't used. Anyway, this is it. So that's the book I did on the Industrial Revolution exhibitions recently. There are 3 cover options. One is soft cover. This is hard cover with image wrap, which I think is the best finish. You can wipe it clean if it gets fingerprints on it. There's another option with a dust cover, which I don't like because they end up getting creased and folded and torn, and it's rubbish. And that'll have just a black hard-bound thing inside, whereas you're going to ruin your image when that eventually happens with the dust cover. So go for the wraparound image thing, which is in this case covering the whole book. And on the back, you've got an option to put some more. You'll notice that the text is in black against the paler part of the image. Just going to show you 1 or 2 other things inside. This was obviously a narrative because it was about the Industrial Revolution. The title page, again, I've used white background. Title page with text. Oh, yes, that's right. And then a sort of standard layout for me would be this. So you've got text on one side. It's all flipped left to right, as you know, when you're doing Zoom. So you've got text on the left-hand side, and there's a lower piece down below, which is a quotation from poetry, which is done in a slightly different density of text, and it's italic rather than just straight. And then you've got the image, almost full page, on the other side. Got somewhere you've got 2 images on a page. This piece is showing you with text appropriate to them on the other side. Another one here showing text on both pages, again with text on this side. And I've got one here where an image crosses the gutter, goes right across the middle, and it's got text on this side as well. So we're going to have a look at all of those. There's one more. Yes, I don't normally do more than 2 or 3 images to a page, but I made an exception here because this was showing the Norfolk four-field system of agriculture, and I thought they're best just to put them all on one page. But I wouldn't normally do that. So let's have a look at Bookwrite. Oh, by the way, that's about an 8 by 10 inch book, and it's got more than 70 pages in it because of the volume of material. They also do much bigger book, which I think is about 17 inches by 11, which is super for a coffee table book. And quality of reproduction is super, absolutely super. Right, let's get stuck into Bookwrite. I'm going to share my screen now.
John, in those you've done, did you pick the paper type?
Yes, I just use normal luster paper. There's all sorts of different papers, but not a huge number, but the luster, which is a sort of satin finish, a bit like Pete does. So it's slightly glossy, but not very. All right. Right, so this is the Bookright face. This is what the page looks like. So I'm just going to run quickly through this. Up at the top here.
We're not seeing your screen just yet.
Okay, that's because I haven't shared it, isn't it? Right, senior moment.
You're not senior yet, John?
Yeah, just coming up now. Sorry, I just don't seem to be able to get this to come up. That's enough. I don't know what's happened here. I'm just going to click in again, I think.
Yeah. So it's normally the share screen and then select the screen top left and then press the share button.
I just, here it is. There we go. Right.
We're still not seeing it just yet.
It's just coming up now.
Yeah. Ah, yeah, there we go.
Okay, you got me now?
Yeah, we got you.
Good. Right, so this is the Bookright software, and do download it and have a play with it. It doesn't cost you anything to play with it and get familiar with how it operates before you start doing it. So at the top we've got File, New Project, Open Project, all this sort of stuff. Export PDF proof. If you want to do a PDF of it, that's the way you do it. The next bit is Edit. There's got the usual undos and all the rest of it. Apply a background color. Spell check. So those are up there. This is the View page. Pages, photos, all of those switched on. Book pricing, all of that stuff. Add, insert, browse, download, but you can actually do a lot of this with little icons on the page in a moment. Text, papers and format, there you go, standard landscape, premium luster, change paper, convert the book to something else. I think Janey's going to talk about trade books and all that, and so forth. ISBNs, unless you're planning to sell it on Amazon at enormous cost, don't bother with it. So the next row below that, we've got the covers. You can set up how your covers are going to look, and then individual pages. The layouts you can choose. That's what they look like. Some of these are for text and some of them are for images. This is about the photos, bringing up the list of photos you've already got in here. I haven't done that yet. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. And you can import text files from elsewhere as RTF files. I've not done that. I prefer to do them on Thingy. Now, over on this side, you've got various information things, but the key thing you want is to be able to preview what your book is going to look like, and so forth. And when you're ready to upload it and start paying the bills, that's how you do it on that one there. So the first thing we need to do is, having made the decisions and Pete's very clear approach to how you make a decent book with all the sort of fundamental principles, is to get the images. So we go to that one there. And down here, there's a little thing that looks like a computer screen. Press that, and that's browsing for photographs. Now, I've already set up a little folder on my desktop. There it is, Legacy Book Picks 1. So we'll open that. And here they are. Now, I've just put 9 images in because we don't have time to do any more than that. So I'm just going to select all of those. And there's a mixture of black and white and color in here. It'll take a moment to do that. It's importing them now. You can see them coming up on that line.
John,
Now-
you missed one.
Yes.
A good tip is, if you want to select them all in one go, is just use Control A will select
Yes.
more.
Anyway, we've got enough to be playing with there, I think. Now it gives you the option for them to lay them out for you. I don't use that. Place them myself. The cover first, that's the best place to start. So you can see it gives you an option of printing a title down on the spine here. And you just type it in and it works. But what you have to decide is what image you're going to put on the front cover. Now, I'm going to start with this one and just pull it in there. There it is. You want something striking. Now, to make it change size to fit the envelope, you take one of the corners. You see it's shrinking down nicely. You can, you can make it fill the whole of the cover if you want. Just grab this and move it around until you think it's right. My internet connection's unstable. Sorry about that. It'll come back in a moment. I am working on a cable, so it shouldn't be too bad. So that's one way of doing it. And if you wanted to fill the whole of the cover, just bring it up in size. These are all JPEGs, by the way. And now we're going to see what it looks like in the book. Just press that little button up there. And there you are. That's what the cover would look like if you did it like that. So that's obviously not very good. So click on the X to come out of that. And it takes you back into editing mode. So you would design and shape your image to fit what you want to do with the cover. Now, anytime you're in editing mode with an image here, you can decide to get rid of that image just by, there's a little dustbin there, you can get rid of it by clicking on that. And you may also want to get rid of the template, and there's another little bin comes up, get rid of that, so you're back to where you were before. So let's bring something else in here. So again, you've got the same thing. You just pull the corners in, do that. Now it's a nice little blue line has come up in the middle here, which tells you that that image is in the middle of the page of where it should be. And you'll notice that there's a wider gap on this side than there is on this. And that's to provide the format you need to avoid problems with asymmetry where the binding is. So now you want to put something in the way of a title. And the best way to do that, I found, is just to go up there to where the T is. Can you all see that? Press T, and then this little thingamajig appears here. Just pull that across and down, and there you put in a nice little template. You can move that across. Again, the blue line comes up when it's in the right position. And then click on here, and this is the text thingy. So you can get your font selection is there. There's lots and lots of fonts. Whoops. So I will just go with Arial. You can have it completely black or some other color, and you can choose the font size there. So let's make quite a big font because it's going to be on the thingy, on the cover. And you can decide, is it going to be oriented to the left? Is it going to be centered? You can have all of that. Anyway, we're going to put in some text now. Legacy, L-E-G, oops, A-C-Y. And then we're going to do that, lowercase of the I-N-D-U-S-T-R-I-A-L. Whoops, as you can see, making spelling mistakes already. Yeah, I think it's a good idea to use the spell check. The problem with it is, of course, you may end up with American spelling, and we certainly don't want aluminum spelt aluminum rather than aluminium, Peter, isn't that right? Poor Pete, he gets the Regulator, Revolution, R-E-V-O-L-U-T-I-O-N. Right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to select this. Whoops. No. I'm trying to use my mouse on a leather surface, which is not the best way. So that probably looks about right. So let's shut that down and go to preview. There you go. Now, if you wanted to put black text, if you wanted to put text over an image, you're probably going to need to do it in white. So we're going to move that up here. Sorry, you're going to need to do it in black to sort it out, and you can change the color of the font as you would any other way. Just select it. Sorry. There we go. And you get, when you select the color, you can go for shades of gray down to white or to black. So put it somewhere in the middle and you'll see, that's it. Apply that one, sorry. Apply, close that, preview. Now you can see you've got a softer text. It's not central anymore because I've moved it around, but that just gives you an example of what you can do with your cover. And as I say, you could have the appropriate image, you can completely cover the whole of the front cover with it, and so on and so forth. So let's go on and have a look at some pages.
John, just before you move on, I noticed that it's picked up your text and put it down the spine.
Yeah, no, it
hasn't. Can you
hasn't.
control that? No?
Yeah, it hasn't actually done that. Okay. What's happened there is that when I was trying to get my mouse to work, it's moved it off to one side. Now that's something I put in before. You could just have to type it in. So legacy of the, there you are, INDUSTRIAL. So you just click on that and then it'll start putting the text in there in the correct position. Okay. So it's very good software. It works really well. So there it is. And if you want to have a close look at what you've done, you can enlarge it here and check the quality of it. Okay. Right. So let's go back again, X to get out of the preview mode. So let's go and look at some pages. Now, what I tend to do is to have this page, which has gray opposite it. Not show it to you because I'm not on screen share, but normally you'd have nothing on this side and your first page would be on the right-hand side. So let's put something in there as a matter of interest. And again, I would normally tend to do this sort of a bit smaller. And just as you do with the title, with the cover, put in a block of text. So you've got something there that introduces the book. So that's pretty straightforward. You then go on to the double pages. One thing I didn't mention, which I should have done, is add insert page numbers. I think that's quite nice. So you just click on that, and where do you want them to go on the pages? I put them either in the center of each page at the bottom, and you can see it come up there, do you see? 2, 3, and it automatically numbers themselves. Done. So that's just telling you what your page number is in editing. This is what will appear when it's printed book. So my normal move here would be to do, say, a single image on the right and text on the left. But I'm going to show you something a bit different, because we're going to have a look at layouts. All sorts of different layouts here. And the one I want is the one with is fairly far along this line. Right. There. So bring that in there. So that's to, it says add text, but it doesn't worry too much about that. You can bring in the photos if you want. And I'm going to bring this guy in here. And this guy in here. Whoops, sorry. These work. I think this guy needs to be looking the other way. So if you click on the image, you get some possibilities here. And down here is a flip up, flipping horizontally. Okay. Hasn't done it for some reason. Anyway, let's reduce them down in size a bit first, and then maybe it'll work properly.
John, is there an option to, when you're pulling them into the cell, for them to fit in that cell?
There is, but I tend not to use that because I want them to do everything my own way. I'm a bit like Pete. You know, I want the book to be set up my way rather than something that they've decided.
Where is that option to pull them in so they fit the cell?
It's probably, I don't use it, so I don't know where it is, to be honest. It'll probably be in photo. Here we are.
Oh, there you go. Yep.
Fit to frame, this sort of stuff. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyway, let's get this guy sorted first. There we are. Let's try flipping him again. No. Flip. There he is. The other thing you can do when you've got an image selected like this, you've got a number of other options. One, you can put in a little border, a stroke. And the other thing is you can let it, if you think you haven't quite got it right when you're getting your images processed in Photoshop or wherever, you can ask it to optimize it for their printing. So watch the image now and I press this. Hasn't made much difference to him, but I'll do it on another one which definitely needs it. Now let's try and get these two looking better. Now you notice the purple edges around this. This is showing you the areas you've got to be careful about. Sorry. Yeah, images that cross, or text that cross that purple line here runs the risk of being chopped out when they print the thing out and when they cut the pages. So this one will definitely be compromised, so you need to bring this in. And you'll notice that it's given you a wider band on the inside of the image where the gutter is. There we go. So you need to keep the image away from this purpley bit here.
John, is there an option to do a lay flat book?
There is, yes. It's up here.
You then don't worry about the binding edge, do you?
Papers and format. There you are, lay flat book. See it there?
Yeah, thanks.
You okay? So let's have a look and see what this looks like. Well, the other thing is when you're doing several images on a page, you see the lines have come up now, showing you, the blue line is showing you that they are, whoops, showing you that they are level here, level in the middle, and level at the top. See the blue lines? So that's got it all lined up, and you check it by looking at it there. So that's what it'll look like when it's finished. Okay, right, let's do another one. I need to bring in some images I didn't get last time. I need to bring in this one and that one and right. You get these little warnings. If you see one of these yellow triangles in the corner of a page, it's telling you there's a problem. And then you just click on that and it'll tell you what it is. Right. Now, the next thing I want to do is to show you this. This image here is a shipwreck. There are very few examples of intact shipwrecks around the UK because most of them get salvaged. And so I wanted this one to be pretty impressive. It's one of my favorite images. So what you can do with some of these, you can just make it, take the corner, pull it out, sorry, having a problem with my mouse. There you go. So there the image is spread across 2 pages. Now you will lose some definition at the gutter in the middle here, but you've got room for text here. So that's worth thinking about, as Pete was saying, have some variety of layout to keep the viewer interested. And you still have options, depending on how you do it, you still have options to put text in on that side anyway. Now, let me see, is there anything else I wanted to briefly show you?
John, I just have a quick question there on that one. Just where you do put a full page or even a larger than single page image down and you have page numbering selected here, on page 5, does it take the image, does that take precedence over the page number, or does it come through the image?
Let me just check that. I've never really looked at that. I think, yeah, I've done, this is what I've done with the printed book you've seen, and I can't see any page number on that side. There is one on the other side, so it's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I just wanted to show you as well on this one. Let me get rid of this. Right. I got to actually get rid of this altogether now. Delete this, start again. Just want to show you something with this image, something that Pete mentioned. Any image that's got, if you're working with a white background, any image that's got a lot of pale areas might benefit from a stroke, which is a little line. In this case, we're going to make black. So we're going to click on that. Here's the image manipulation stuff. No border. Do you see that one there? And I'm going to put a black line around it. And I'll You know, it's popped down there. And I'm going to make it 2 millimeters thick.
Do you mean millimeters, or is that pixels?
You're right, I think it is pixels. Come on. No, it doesn't say. Anyway, I think that's about the right thickness. Number 2, whatever it is. So you can see that because the edges of this image are quite pale, it benefits from having a restraining line. There's another one here that's probably even better. Let me make this one a little smaller. This has got a very pale sky. Now you can see this one. The sky is very, very difficult to see around this, so that won't do. Let's put a stroke on that. Come on, there it is. So you can make the border black, or you can make it gray. There it is there. This is your color selection. Let's make it gray, something about there, so it's not too conspicuous. Apply that, and then increase it to a width of 2. And there you are. So that just helps to contain the image. Just very quickly then, let me get rid of this, delete. Let's put some text in here just to show you how it's done.
Is it possible to do kind of a universal border? Could you say you wanted every single image in the book to have that same border?
You probably can. It's not something I would do, add insert.
Would it be in the preferences or anything like that?
It's probably, I think I've seen it somewhere. It's not something that I do. By the way, add background color is in there. You'd have to play around with it and find it. Insert page numbers. Yeah, probably is in there somewhere. So anyway, this is a text box, and I've just pulled it in with the little T, and it'll give you, no, ignore that. Here we are. So I don't like total black. I like a sort of fairly mid-gray. Let's put something fancy in the way of a really nice. Lots and lots of fonts in here. Something for everybody. I like Garamond. It's a nice old-fashioned one. Old-fashioned sort of guy, really. And we're going to have it on this side. Let's put something in. Jeff Owen is, oops, is now then, let's have a proper look at this. You see this? So he isn't really. He's quite useful at times, I suppose.
Oh, Jeff.
I'm pleased to hear it.
Anyway.
I'm glad you clarified that, John.
There we are. Let's take that down.
Favorite what though, John?
Sorry?
Favorite what?
Well, that's between me and him.
Okay.
So you can then decide, no, I don't want it in the middle. I want it to be on the left. You can change the font and the density and all the rest of it with all these various things about the place. Okay. I think that's about all I can cover in the time available. Do upload or download, or whatever the phrase is, the software and play around with yourself. And you'll get all sorts of possibilities. If you right click on this lot over here, there's more options, and so on and so forth. Okay, any questions? I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah, John, I've made a lot of photos in Blurb, but I haven't. I'm just venturing now into Bookwrite. I'm really struggling to find tutorials. Can you recommend any good tutors online? Dan Milner has done a lot of videos, but they don't cover everything I'm looking for.
Yeah, I haven't used any tutorials. I've learned the hard way by playing around and finding the things you've just seen. And it takes a little while. The trouble with a lot of these companies is that they're constantly changing the software, which means every time, if you do one book a year, which is what I do, by the time you come to do the next one, you find it's all changed. The other thing that's worth mentioning is they will often be special offers. So if you keep a watch out for that, sometimes you'll find 40% off the book, which makes a big difference. I think I'm right in saying, I haven't looked at it recently, but I think the sort of book I showed you there in 20 pages with a hard image wrap cover is probably going to be around £30 or a little bit less. And you can have multiple copies. You can come back and reprint it at a later time if you find you need more. But play around, find your own way around the software template and have a good look at it. Okay, anything else?
Thanks, John. That was very good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John. It's great.
I've got one more, John. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm on mute. Suppose you get your first book and you're not entirely happy with it. Can you go back and then review it and make changes before you, say, bought it for somebody else?
Yeah, I do that all the time. The first copy is, to me, a proof, because when you look at it, you'll find that image is too dark, or I wish I'd said something different, or as Pete says, you've got a typo. Yeah, I always do one for myself. And then if you want a number of other copies, I'll do the same. In fact, I did a calendar recently. It's the first time I've ever done a calendar. And when it came back, the images were fine, but they were all too dark. So when I printed off half a dozen or whatever it was I was doing for friends, I adjusted that and then printed it off, and it was fine. So yeah, I do the same with the book. Always do, for me, I always do a proof copy first to make sure that it's okay.
Right, thank you.
Great. Okay, so I think we've got Janey up next.
Okay, is my sound all right, Jeff?
Yeah, it's fine.
Right, okay, I can share screen. Are you seeing a screen?
Yep.
Yep. Great. Okay, well, I was going to start my talk by looking at some of the books that I've got a reasonably extensive but fast growing, especially over the last few months, photo library of books that I enjoy. And I've photographed one or two with hopefully illustrations of the kind of the books that from the layout and the actual sort of look of the book have inspired me and maybe helped me in my thoughts when I'm looking at how to design a book that I want to create. Now this is one by Michael Kenner. It's his Holga pictures, which I got a couple of years ago when I first started playing around with the Holga camera. And one of the things that John was mentioning about was the cover and whether you put a full page of a full image on the cover and then the title on top. Again, the the cover is very, very important, obviously, because it's the first thing people are going to see, and it needs to give you a little bit of a glimpse about what the book's about. But also, if you are going to put the text on top, you need to make sure that you choose a suitable image. I've made 1 or 2 mistakes, some of which I'll show you here, whereby the text has got a bit lost in the image. So again, play around with images, and as you've seen from John's talk, it's really easy to swap images in and out. If you don't like one, try a different one. So one of the things I love about this book is the simplicity of the layout. And that's certainly something that I would be looking at when we get to the judging of the competition, and a layout that allows you to sort of spend time on each particular image. So this is just the image and a small caption. And I think that's the most he puts. But again, if you look at the layout, identical layout, even though it's using 2 pages on that set of pages. So the image is exactly in the same place. And that's one of the things in Blurb that you can do is and it's worth thinking about right from the beginning, is find a design page layout. And I think as Pete was saying, maybe just choose 2 or 3, don't go mad. And then save my layouts, which you can do. And I think on John's example, he was sort of putting the images on top of the cells. You can also drag the image into the cell. And if you've saved those cells as your layout, then it's very easy every time you add a new page to choose which of the maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 layouts page layouts you've got, some of which might just be images and some might be images with text. And then you get consistency throughout the book, which to my mind helps the reader and makes it a more enjoyable experience looking at it. This is another one, different sort of cover layout, whereas the image is quite small. And in fact, they've used some quite clever, this is obviously a big production run, and it's Alex Oath's book, Niagara. And this is quite a big book. And again, I think we have got a limit on the size of the book for the competition, but some people might want to go big, and I know Pete does, and I'm tending, it depends very much on the images that you've got. Some images need space, and these are all medium format or large format camera images, and they need that amount of space for you to really enjoy the book. If this was down to a sort of 5 by 8 book inches, it wouldn't work at all in the same immersive experience. And that is it's an experience. So you're taking your reader on a journey, and you want them to sort of enjoy the ambience and how you feel about the images. This is another similar sized book, it's quite big. Again, just on the cover, this is obviously something that we're not going to be able to do with using people like Blurb, but he's actually used a slightly raised embossed surface. And again, one of the things that's increasingly important, I think, if you are getting more sophisticated and wanting to put your books in for competition, external competitions, of which there are quite a few, is being quite sort of inventive and creative and original in your thoughts. This actually, it was only until I read the book as I realized what on earth that was all about. I thought it was a castle. In fact, it's the stock exchange, the graph plummeting, so it's quite subtle. And again, it's just these ideas and thought processes as you're designing your book about what you want, what impact you want the reader to have. And again, large book, large format, medium format type images, so they can quite happily be blown up to this size. But with most of the cameras that we're using these days, again, don't be afraid of size for the reasons for the competition, because we didn't want people to sort of go out and spend hundreds of pounds creating an expensive book. We've limited the price a little bit, but as you've seen with John's talk, if you do design a book in Blurb, you can actually change the size later. So if you want a copy for yourself bigger, But if you do that, just be very careful, because not all the ratios are the same. So if you're converting a book from one size to another, you have to really go through again and just check. They do a very good job, I have to say. I've done it on one of my books, and I was surprised how little editing I had to do. And this is one way of getting around the problem of where you put text. If I go back, you'll see there's just a little caption, and you can go through and enjoy the images. But then what I loved about this particular book is there's then just a paragraph about that particular episode. A lot of this was political stuff about the election. And then he goes on to do various sort of festivals and things in the UK and stuff. But there's a little paragraph there of the text that is thoroughly enjoyable, and it's very readable. And again, that is something that when I'm looking at books, I will have, it'll sway me to a large, or to a certain extent, is how well written the text is. You want your readers to be able to read the text without really struggling through it. And I know I personally find this the hardest part of creating a book, is to do the text so that it's hopefully readable. This is a lovely book, which I've just chanced on, and it's a book about the pool, and it helped me because I was doing show you in a minute, project about a quite narrow bit of a walk along an old discarded derelict canal locally. And so this is just one pool, and he's made a whole book out of images of the pool. And the cover, you can't see it, but it's actually sort of tracing paper over so the fly cover is, or dust jacket is tracing paper. And it gives a lovely feel to the book immediately before you even open it. And then what I love about his book, and I think maybe it's gone a bit OTT, but again, just bear this in mind, the opening pages are really quite important. So that's the first bit. Then he gives you the pool, the title of the book and his name. So again, lots of empty space. So immediately you're beginning to get into the sort of feel of this quiet little gentle pool. And then he goes on, and there's a bit in blurb. You do get the option of removing blurb logo. You have to pay a bit extra to do it. Otherwise, I think it possibly ends up here or at the end. I can't remember now because I use different formats now. Anyway, a little bit of text about copyright and all that sort of good stuff and when it was published. And then he gets to the foreword. Again, more white space and grey space using different colours for the pages. And then he gives his dedication. And then he gets the first image. Now I say, I'm sure, because I think, again, we've limited the number of pages for the competition to keep the cost down. You probably won't want to go that far. But again, it just gives, when you read the book, this lovely feeling of sort of getting slowly into the book, slowly into this lovely pool. And the whole book's got a really lovely feel to it. And then when I can't remember, about 40, 50 pages, something like that, mostly one image per page. And then at the end, he says something about himself. Yeah, and then that's the end of the book. Next one's quite different. This is a guy, George Giorgio, who came to the Arena seminar a few years ago, did an excellent talk. And he'd taken a load of pictures from the top of a bus. And again, I found it highly inspirational. But again, just look at the creativity of the, this is actually a box over a concertina book. And when you get into it, you can just flip these pages round. So you can open this up on a floor and have different bits. And it's really quite fun to look at the different positioning of the images. So again, some of them, most of them go over the gutter, but because it's basically a concertina book, it's much less obtrusive to the image than if it was a bound book. Now, this is another one I included in my selection because, again, when I saw it, I went to his exhibition in London, and there was a book supposedly for sale, but sadly there was nobody actually selling it. So I went and emailed him and bought it online. He's got something like 3 different runs of it with different bright, that's a bright lime green. There's also an orange one, and I can't remember what the other color is. So again, you know, don't be a bold magic party place, you know, it deserves a bold color. So if that's the sort of tone of your book, unlike the last one we looked at, you can be a bit zazzy and a bit creative. And again, big font for the title, you know, don't be afraid of, you know, blasting it out there. And again, some of the images are full page images. And what I thought was rather special about this book, even though it is a professionally produced book, he's used lots of different papers. So that was possibly just an ordinary matte paper. And then he's used a slightly shiny paper. And I think the text might even be on a semi-transparent paper. And it goes through and he uses about 3 or 4 different types of paper. Goodness knows what that added to the cost. But again, you know, we're talking in a different league, really. These are people who are getting them professionally produced. And a lot of the books are now being produced in Czechoslovakia and places like that, and Turkey, where there's some printers who are doing some great printing at much less cost to English printers. Yep, so different formats. But again, I don't think he ever put anything more than 2 images on a page, and most of them are much simpler and single images. Now, this is one that was kind of homemade, but for sale. I don't know how many he did in the print run, and he might well, he's actually a Czech photographer, and he might well have actually got it professionally done. I didn't actually ask him. But again, very simple layout, just an image. This is actually a self-portrait, and then a little bit of blurb about himself. And then again, just a very simple layout. This is a set of images about his brother, and they're really very thought-provoking, and it's a lovely book. But again, lots of white space around the images. Now, one publisher I really like and keep in touch with on their website is Hoxton Mini Press. And they do a whole series of books. And the thing I love about them is that they're very affordable. A lot of them are sort of £10 to £15. £20 starts getting more expensive. And they're widely available in bookshops, but also if you buy them from Hoxton Mini Press themselves, their presentation, it comes in beautifully wrapped and a little handwritten thank you for the order from the one of the co-founders of the company. And they do a lot of, it's mostly documentary stuff around London, but it's a lovely sort of format. Again, very simple, little bit of caption underneath. It's another few pages. And then this is actually a book within a book. And I've sadly lost my copy of the actual, I've lived in London for 6.5 years. And these are just super pictures of an old guy he got to know. And again, I think Pete was talking as well about using black, and John was talking as well, and then putting text on. You can do it on the cover, but you can also do it with the text. Certainly I've done it, and Blurb do a very good job. I've used Blurb exclusively, as I'll come on to in a minute. They do a very good job of their black. If they don't, and I had one problem, then do contact them, and their customer support is very good, and they reprint it for you without quibble. I'm assuming it's a valid issue. So I'll just go on to Blurb Books, and I'll just follow up on John and Pete's talk, because a couple of things that I thought about when they were talking. One is we're talking about paper. you can actually buy for a couple, oh, I think it's maybe a £5, I'm not sure it's even that much, a sample pack of papers from Blurb. I mentioned earlier about using your own custom templates and taking time when you do your first few books to actually get a layout that you like and save it. Because if you're doing other books, as I'll show you in a second, and you want to use the set, you want to keep them as a uniform set of books, it's really nice. You can copy the book and then get rid of the images and text and use that same template so that it looks the same. Blurb also have got a sales option so that when you publish the book, you get the option quite easily. It takes 5–10 minutes to set up. And then you get a URL that you can put on the website or send to somebody if they want to buy the book. The only slight problem is their shipping costs. Come on to book pricing. I think you might have seen, if you're eagle-eyed on John's talk, it comes out with book pricing, which it gives you the price of the book, which is fine. But don't forget the shipping tends to depend a bit where you live and what book you're using, in the order of £6–7. So individual books, that adds quite a bit to it. Spell check, one thing I'd just say about that is that I found the learn function is irritatingly slow to learn, and if I'm using a particular word that isn't in their dictionary, and I keep saying save it, but it doesn't seem to save it, and I keep having to ignore or whatever. The other thing that's very pertinent to the competition is that John showed you that there's a PDF proofing. You can do that, but the quality, and it's very useful to do it, particularly if you want to get somebody to have a look at things and cast an eye over the text and stuff. But the quality of the images isn't very good, and it's got, I think, do not use or draft or proof or something over it. What you really need to do is buy one of your own books, which can cost, depending on the size and everything, anything from a few pounds up to sort of 20–30, as long as you're not going into the bigger books. And then you get the option for about £3–4 to create a PDF, and that's beautiful quality, and that's the one that certainly if you're using Blurb for the competition, that I would recommend that you use, because otherwise the quality won't be very good. Just on book pricing as well, some of the books I'm going to be showing in a second, like trade books, they need a certain number of pages. So just be a little bit careful that it depends who's actually, they use different printers. And depending on the printer that they're using, they might need to be multiple of 12 or 4 pages. So just be a bit careful that you make sure before you finally commit yourself how many pages you need. Text, I've been able to copy, cut and paste from Pages. I use Apple's software, so I'm not sure about Word, but certainly it works on Apple. And yes, somebody mentioned special deals. If you get onto their marketing email, okay, it's very irritating because you get emails virtually every other day, but they do have lots of special deals, and sometimes it's no postage or no postage and packing. Other times it's 40% discount. Other times it's multiple books. So it's worth keeping an eye on those deals. And I think I mentioned the other one, that when you do your layout on the cells, you can drag your image into those cells so that it automatically resizes. And then you've got an option in that bit that John showed us to either makes the image the size of the cell, or keep the image, if it's a different ratio to your cell, or keep the image as it is. Okay, so I'm just going to show a few of the books and the formats. Now these are what they call trade books, and I've just put some of the sizes. I love the format of this, and the reason why is because they are quite similar to the Hoxton Mini Press type of size book, which I love. And although just going on, I've done them also in centimeters, just be a little bit careful. They're image sizing isn't totally accurate. So take it with, if you need to know exactly what their sizing is, just be a little bit careful, because I measured some of these and they weren't. That's why I put inches as well. I think the inches for trade books is correct, but the centimeters is a wee bit off. Whereas on Photobooks, it's done in centimeters. And again, this is because they're printed by different printers. So yes, 3 sizes, the big one, the one that is sort of A5 size in the middle, and a smaller one, which again can be quite nice as just a little book. This is just looking at one of the bigger ones. In Oman, the landscape was big, and I wanted it to be a bigger book. And so this is just a few images, again, how I like to lay my books out, with lots of white space, and using not on that, like on that one, using pages, empty pages as well. It might be a bit wasteful in terms of cost, but I have to say, I just think the experience that I want to create for the books is improved by having white space. And then sometimes you want to put a little caption and about where it is. I tend to put my place captions in a different font, and I try over my books to be a bit consistent. I can't say that I am. And this is one that is, I made a mistake. If you can look at the text, it's above where it should be, and it should have been dropped down. Now, usually there's a box for text, and you can, again, if you click on the box, you can say whether you want the text to be at the bottom or at the top. And another thing that you need to kind of make a consistent decision is whether you have the text justified left or right. On that one, obviously, it's right justified, and on that, it's left justified. And you can also spread the text across. Very much personal choice. Just say a word about font. I personally like small fonts. My fonts are rarely go, for my text in the book, rarely go above 10. I have a personal dislike, I think, if I pick up a book and it's in big font all the way through, and it kind of makes me feel that it's a book that's been written for babies or something, and I feel a bit, or maybe my eyesight, I'm an old person, so my eyesight isn't brilliant, which it isn't. I don't know, I just think aesthetically it looks nicer, smaller, but whatever it is, just keep in mind being consistent. And whether it's a serif font or a sans serif font, very much a matter of personal choice. Most books say that if you're printing, you should use a serif font. That's the one with the little squiggly bits. My personal like, I have to say, is for a sans serif font. But I think I run against the grain there. Again, very much personal choice. I know lots of people look at a book and they say, oh God, that's in Arial or something. You know, that's terrible. But to my mind, keep the font simple. And then if you do want to change your format or work from on a different platform, chances are your fonts will still be valid. These are using magazine format. And this is one I really like. You can get, they're quite big-ish, the size of a normal sort of magazine. And I just, again, when I started doing this, just because I wanted to make consistency, I used a little thing that sort of was a bit like a picture press, and had the sort of red logo thing. And then I put the date, because I do find these are quite useful. And I tend to do one of these when I've been off on a photo jaunt somewhere, and just want to have a method of putting the images together. And very simple, straightforward, and the images, a little bit of text. And as much as anything, if you've done a lot of investigation and got involved in the history of a place or something, it's nice to put it down, because unless you, well, if you're anything like me, buy you know, 2 or 3 years later, you've forgotten the date that such and such happened or the implication of something or other. And so it's really nice to have all that in one book. And again, importance of linking images. There's a lot that goes into sequencing of books, and a lot, it's a sort of dark magic art, I think. When you see a book, you know when it's been well done and when it's been badly done. And I must confess, I'm no expert in it at all. I really, it's an aspect of creating books that I struggle with. But one of the things do think about when you're doing your book is having images that have some sort of link together, and then maybe breaking it so that, again, you don't want your use, a bit like I think some of us were saying earlier about formats. It's sometimes quite good to break the format, and then it makes your reader sort of wake up and stop just flicking pages. That's the worst thing. You don't want people to just flick pages. You want them to read and be immersed in the experience of your book. So yeah, just different types of layout, either having a full page bleed. Again, very easy to do in Blurb. You can set up or in fact, there's a standard one with a full page bleed format, and it does it for you. And this is going on to Photobooks. This is what I used to begin with. And I think we were talking earlier, there's an option of a dust cover. I started off, this goes back quite a long way when I did this, to 2001 or something, I can't remember. And I started using a dust cover, and then I discovered actually it was a bit of a pain because you've got to think of things to put on the dust cover. And as I think Pete, maybe, or John, I can't remember, said, they do tend to get a bit scruffy. So I do prefer to use image wrap. Again, consistency, that's where the Blurb logo comes up, but you can stop it. I don't personally have a problem. I think it's quite interesting that a book has been produced by Blurb, so I don't see the point in taking it away. But I guess if you were publishing it for bigger numbers, you might want to. And so just, again, consistency of format, simplicity of format, which is kind of what I'm looking for. Now, I know that there are those of you out there who've got pictures and you want to cram them all into a page. And I think, you know, hopefully we've all said the same thing, that basically we feel it's a bit of a mistake. One way of doing it, if you really desperately want to put some images and you can't bear to leave them out, but at the same time you don't want your book to have 2,000 pages, is to do something like this. And I did these on my early books and just had the sort of standard format for all my photographic journey books, whereby I just put a little template again together and just put these images in. They're the ones I enjoy, but I didn't want, but they sort of come at the end of the book after the book's finished. And then I was saying, you've got to think of something if you use a dust cover, what to put on. So I then moved over to image wrap, and these are a set of books. Again, I like my books to be consistent. So I've now done logs for all my sailing travels, but up to 2019. Our holiday this year was so short that I didn't actually really do very much, but anyway, it'll probably get combined with next year, or this year, if we're actually able to go. So again, image wrap, that's the size that they're coming out at, which I find a nice size to use for this sort of thing. And just, you've got a couple of pages there that are blank, and then you can go straight in to your introduction. And then again, I try not to do more than two, maybe on these sorts of books, because they're more holiday snap type books, use more images on the layout, but I rarely go above 2. 4, I think, is probably the most I would do. And these are just a couple of other, there's a nice little square one, which I quite like. I think that's 14 centimeters square. And then I did again for Ethiopia, which was big. I did a bigger book on that. Now, one of the things I mentioned, you can do the PDF, and I wanted to do a book. I did followed the volunteers on steamship Shield Hall for a year, and I wanted to give them something back that they could basically sell in their shop or sell to the volunteers. And I wanted to try and make it cost effective. To do it in Blurb would have been much too expensive, because although I think when you get to 10 copies or something, they give you 10%. But, you know, 10% on those costs is pretty paltry. So I went to various different, I approached through contacts, various different printers, and I got a very good deal for about, I can't remember, 20 books. I think obviously the number of books you have decreases quite sharply, the unit price. And it went anything from 50 books to about £8 a piece, or 20 books was about £10 a piece, something of that ilk. But in Blurb, they would have been getting on with the number of pages that were in, getting on for £15–20. So that's one advantage of using the PDF. And I literally just sent the PDF to the printers, and that was it. Job done, didn't have to do anything else. Having done, I have to say, a prototype in using Blurb. And so, yeah, that was just that one. And a few images there of the volunteers. And I just felt it was a nice way of saying a thank you to letting me into their work they were doing and let me take pictures and get in the way. Now, I just wanted to finally mention, this isn't really for the competition, but some of you might feel that doing Blurb is a bit too much, or you like doing scrapbooks. There are loads and loads of scrapbooks commercially available. I tend to get mine from Hobbycraft, which for me is just up the road, and they're also being open online. So I've done a few bits and bobs online. And again, they're images that would otherwise go in the bin. And I just thought, oh, right, instead of putting them in the bin, I just cut them out and pasted them into a scrapbook. And then I did scrapbook 2, and I was playing around with doing landscape type of images and joining images together using my Holga lens. And, you know, this was just a bit of fun and just something I was experimenting with, basically. But I wanted to, rather than just throw it all away afterwards, just stick it in a scrapbook. And this was a bit more thoughtful. I'm working on a project which unfortunately is sort of on hold about at the moment because I can't get into Southampton with lockdown. But so I used a concertina book from Hobbycraft, which has got something like, I can't remember, 70 pages. I actually wanted a few more, so I joined them together. And I've just printed off my images, cut them out and pasted them into the book. Basic, but just little tiny dots so that I can move the images around if I want. And it gives you the feeling of how the book might look and how you read the images as you go through. And then a bit of text at the end. And this just one thing that I've mentioned sometimes in my talks. Again, this is a bigger scrapbook, but something that I use fairly consistently now when I'm working on a project is basically putting in contact sheets of not every single image I've taken on a particular day, but I'd maybe narrow it down to in sort of 3 stars or 4 stars or whatever in Lightroom, down to about 20 images, something like that. Print them off just on a desktop printer as I've got down in the kitchen here, and then put them in scrapbook. And I have to say it's much, much easier just if I'm looking for a particular image, just to flick through here, and I can make notes to myself as to where it was, what lens I was using, anything I would do better. So this isn't actually for the competition, but I just wanted to mention that. So again, another couple of formats that you can get to stick. These are empty artist books that you can stick images into, and more concertina books, lots of different formats. Then in lockdown, I saw that the RPS were advertising a course by Alex Hare on making handmade books, and I've always wanted to have a go, but I had tried. I've done one on one of my projects, and I was really pleased with how it was progressing, but I hit a few practical issues about how to do it. So I signed on to, there were 2 courses. First one was to make a small concertina book, And he goes through very, very well, and with videos to support it, so that if you've forgotten afterwards, you can go back and look at videos, how to make a very simple concertina book yourself. Great fun to do. He gives you a list of the ingredients that you need, and not only what you need, but websites that you can buy them. So it makes the whole thing. And he keeps the course, it's online, down to about, I think there were 8 maybe people on the course, which is very manageable, and he's very organized about it. So definitely recommend that. And the other one was a Japanese stitch book, and slightly different. I wanted, on the project that I was working on, to do 3 different books. They didn't really quite work as a blurb book. And he, again, this was a 2-day course that he ran, took us through how to do these. Again, same thing, told us where to get the supplies. And again, you can then use different papers. This is using a sort of tracing paper, which I printed on my cheap printer, not my expensive printer, in case it went wrong. And then this was, I wanted 3 different aspects of looking at this canal, and I might even do a few more. That was one using cyanotypes. This was using reflections in the water. And again, I have on some of them 2 images per page, but these have obviously been printed and then put into the book. And then this was the final one using composites. So I'll stop sharing. Don't know whether anybody's got any questions.
I mean, I just found that fascinating. And just a really big thanks to all the effort that you 3 have put in for this talk today. It's been great.
Jeff, I think Avril wanted to say something, but she was muted.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. I didn't catch who the organizer was at the the last bit you said, Janey, about the concertina books.
The Alex Hare.
Alex Hare, thank you.
Yeah, and you can either Google him. He does do courses outside the RPS, but the one I sort of started on was done through the RPS, and it was being run because it kept on getting booked up. It was running fairly consistently, I think, through the year.
Thanks very much.
Okay, well, I hope that's inspired everyone to
amazing
to enter the book competition and given you plenty of ideas. Now, one thing, a little bit of a bonus, we went to do a click and collect at Tesco's the other day, and this bottle of whiskey appeared, and we said we didn't order that. The bloke said, well, I can't be bothered to take it back in. I said, well, do you want it? And he said, no. I said, all right, I'll keep it. So we have a prize. I know that Mike has already generously offered a bottle of wine to the photo book winner and to the 1 minute AV winner, but we've also got a bottle of whiskey going free. So that's another incentive for you all. Also, say thanks to everybody today. I think that's been a really great morning. If you're up for more stuff, we've got the documentary group on Sunday morning as well. If you want to come along to that, we've got a talk from Stuart Hall. So has anyone else got anything else they'd like to say?
It's not a talk from Stuart Hall, is it? It's,
oh, sorry, it's
Simon Leach.
Simon Leach, I beg your pardon.
Yep. Yeah. Simon Leach. Just to say that there was a lecture a year ago with David Hearn in Cardiff, and Stuart Wall has made a book from that lecture showing, you know, with all the text of his talk about his life in photography. And there's some wonderful bits of, and again, and he was selling it on Facebook. And I do recommend it. And even, you know, we all were sort of clapping the talk afterwards. So
it's Janey on it.
Yeah, there's a picture of Janey on there. Yeah, and And obviously our good friend Sean Connery, one of the pictures David Hearn took, and there's loads of anecdotes about how he took all these various pictures and all the various famous people he talked to, and there's mind maps and everything. So it's extremely concentrated, good sense. So if you look on Facebook, Stuart Wall, he produced it with his wife, and he's selling, I think it's 15 quid or something.
Yeah, I paid £15 for it.
So there you are. Anyway, that's a bit of publicity.
Yeah, just another thing. We produce a village magazine once a month. I work on the periphery of that. Produce a 40-page magazine that is produced in a system called Canva. It's online and you can also download. That's the sort of thing we do. And you can produce a PDF. It's free for personal use. So if you want a cheap, simple way of producing a PDF for the competition, that might be a way to go as well.
Okay, great. Right, I'll stop recording then if everyone's finished, and I'll try and get this video up sometime. It always takes a while to just trim it and then upload it, but I'll get it done in the next few days.
Thanks very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. See